Okay. Oh, after suffering terribly for a whole day, I'm not being able to learn. I'm missing it so much. So now, a day and a half. Why? I could learn till Chatzos and Shabbos. Without. Oh, yeah, but it's not the same as learning normal Gemara, so therefore it was painful. That's why Chazal told us not to learn on Tisha B'Av. Okay, get into the main point. Halacha is if a person has a sukkah and for schach he takes a ivy, a vine, anything like that, and he spreads it across without cutting it from the ground, it is possible. Why is it possible? It's you've jumped, but I'm afraid. Yeshai is more correct than the mistake. You talk about after cutting. I said he hasn't cut it, so it's still growing. If it's still growing, that's something which you gather. Anything which is growing is no good. So therefore, if that would be the case, it is possible. Okay. Now, what happens if you cut it after he draped it over the roof? And as Vitzal pointed out, it is possible because of Ta'asav Leminos. We had a Shiur of Rav, a very interesting Shiur of Rav. And Rav said that if you cut it, it is okay. Why is it okay according to Rav? Does anybody remember? Right. The act of cutting, that's enough to consider it not Ta'asav Leminos. Because that's what I did to make it okay. Ta'asav Leminos, according to Rav, would be if you've got a haystack and you dig into the haystack. Chaim very kindly put up some pictures. One of the pictures that he put up was the haystack. And there, the problem is that what happens is, you can see a person over here is digging into a haystack. So there, he did nothing at all about the roof. He did nothing about the roof. So that's Ta'asav Leminos. But he didn't do anything about the hole. He didn't do anything about the roof. All he did was dig a hole. If you cut the ivy, so what you've done is, you've done something right about the roof. That's the chiddush of Rav. Now, we don't actually do Paskin like Rav. What the Gemara suggests now is Nimekat Hanoi. And here we have a tiny bit of Akdama that Hadassim can sometimes grow berries. Berries. The Gemara calls it Anovim, which we normally translate as grapes. But in English, there's a differentiation between a grape and a berry. The halacha is that if a hadas has berries on, it depends. If it has a lot of berries, it is possible. The reason is because berries have a different color, right? The hadas is green, the berry is usually red or purple, and it looks ugly. It looks spotted. But if it's only got a little bit and you take them, if you only grew with a little bit, or you grew with a lot but you took them off, then it is okay, right? So if you get an hadas and it's got berries on it, you have to take them off. That is one halach. Another halach is the Abba Minim is machloikas as to whether they need to be bound. Whether they need to be bound. The machloikas, does Abba Minim need to be bound or not? Is the binding of the Abba Minim an essential part of the Abba Minim? And another question we have to ask ourselves, is there an issa of Ta'asav Leminos also regarding Abba Minim? So I'll ask you the following shayla. A person went, he made the whole binding of the lulav with the hadassim and the avos. He bound them together. And then he looked at the hadassim. And then he noticed that the hadassim have too many berries. So he took off the berries. By the way, would you be allowed to take the berries off on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Why not? It's not picking because it's not koitza, because it's no longer on the tree. It's no different from taking grapes off of a. Oh, very good. It's tikkun keli. You're fixing something on Shabbos. No, it's not boiva. It's not boiva. Because if it would be mixed, if it would be falling apart, it could be boiva. The more says it's tikkun keli. But let's get again. So therefore, on Yom Tov, he's not allowed to pick them because of tikkun keli. It's not koitza because it's already off the tree. It's like taking grapes off a bunch of grapes, which is permitted. So this person bound the three together, the das, the avos, and the lulav, and then what? No, because it's not growing. It's not growing. It's cut off. Okay. And then what happened was he took off the berries after it was bound. Would you say that it is kosher or not kosher? Very good. Really, the answer is it depends on a few things. If the eggers, for example, if the binding is not ma'akav, so what could the problem be? It's as if he's taking off the berries. Fine, so he's done it now. If you see the binding is ma'akav, So then you can say like this: he first bound it, then he took off the berries. When he bound it, it wasn't hadasim kasherim; they weren't kosher hadasim, and now he makes it kosher. That's no good. But you could argue against that. Who says there's a problem tasav leminasu regarding the Abba Minim? Maybe there's no problem tasav leminasu regarding the Abba Minim. So in fact, you could argue back and forth regarding this shaila. And there's another way you could argue about this shaila. We just mentioned Rav, and Rav said that when you cut the ivy from the floor, it is kosher. Why? Oh, what about tasav leminasu? What did Rav answer? You're doing something. The actual act of cutting it from the ground, that itself doesn't make a tasav leminasu. So plucking the berries should also not make a tasav leminasu. So in fact, this question, when you've got to bind hadassim, arovas, and the lulav, and then afterwards you take off the berries of the hadassim, whether it's kosher or not depends on quite a number of things. You want to say something?
Just saying, is the binding the same thing you have to do it lishma? What if he did it lishma and then he took the berries off afterwards? Is that the same shaila?
Not exactly, no. Nobody was mechadish so far that you need to do the binding lishma. Rather, the question is, does it need to be bound altogether? If it does need to be bound, so taking the berries off afterwards, you haven't done anything. So now the Gemara says, Lema ketanoi, well, Yudala from a base, about 20 lines from the top. Ova belikton. If a person did an aveira and he took the berries off, which aveira tikkun possible. It is possible to be Shimon. Very solid. But Chachamim machshir. Chachamim says it's kosher. So we have a machlokes tanoim in the situation when you take off the berries if it's kosher or possible. And now the Gemara, in order to try and explain how this has got to do with Rav, tells a few pieces of logic. Savur. Savur means the people of the yeshiva who tried to prove from this price that they thought the following things. Everybody agrees you need to bind it. And we learn lulav from Succca that just like by Succca there's a problem tasav and also by lulav there's a problem tasav and also. So what's the machlokes? If you have to do eget and you're not allowed to have tasav and also, so how can it be kosher if you took the berries after you did eget? We say by Succca cutting it, that's the act. Plucking the berries, that is the act of making it. We don't say by Succca or by lulav that the cutting is considered as if you've made it. Says, well, look, no, that's not the machlokes. What could the machlokes be? Anybody want to suggest another machlokes? What the machlokes could be? There's two ways you could suggest it. Whether there could be the machlokes is whether bichlal, whether that's all you need to bind it. If you don't need to bind it, then there's nothing wrong to take off the berries. And there's another machlokes, whether there's such a tasav and also by lulav. So there's two ways to explain this machlokes which have nothing to do with Rav Shitta. Says, well, look, the everybody agrees we don't say, not like Rav. And that category is not asiyasan. The machlokes is, do we learn tasav and also from lulav to Succca? If indeed you'd have to bind it, that would be the machlok. That would be a problem. It's a different machlokes. And in fact, really, if somebody would say to you, what's the din by berries which you pluck off a das after it's been bound? There are three ways to understand the machlokes. Either it's like Rav, that the plucking is considered that it's not das and os, or whether the bichlal is a problem to asim or os regarding a dasim, or whether bichlal you need to bind it. So now the Gemara says machlokes is whether you need to bind it. The Tanya, lulav ben ogud ben she'in ogud kosher. Tanakama says whether you bind it or not, it's kosher. Yudei ogud kosher shenogud posel. My tamed to Yudei yalef lekiche v'agudas esa. The Torah says by agudas esa, by the hyssop of the wife to sprinkle the blood. There has to be a good, and a good needs to be a, what's the word for it? It has to be a good means a binding, or good, something which is bound together. Just like they was tied up, they never learned that Shava. And since they never learned that Shava, therefore they do not learn that halacha. I just want to show you a Rashi, an interesting Rashi. Lo Yalfinon. It's a Rashi which by me, it's next to the Givin Hashas. It's about just past halfway. Lo yalfinon. Rashi, we don't. They never knew this Gzeir Shava. Look at the words of Rashi. This Rashi is one of the like. Lo yom do. They never knew this Gzeir Shava. Never learned it. Ve'ein adam don Gzeir Shava ma'atzmoi. You cannot make up your own Gzeir Shava. Elim ken lomdim rabbi, ve'rabbi mirabbi ad beishu abbeinu. You can never kal v'chayma. You can make up yourself. Svara you can make up yourself. Gzeir Shava you cannot. Maybe they were waiting for the Gzeir Shava. So since they never knew this Gzeir Shava, they didn't hold of this Gzeir Shava. It says more. Command Oz lahod Tanya lulav mitzvah loigdav is mitzvah to bound it. If you didn't kosher, if Rabbi Yehuda kilo yogdav my kosher, if you didn't buy it, why is it kosher? If abonon my mitzvah, lo'ilam rabbanon hi. Mishul shenema zeh kili van deyu isnola follow the mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah to make the mitzvahs look beautiful, and binding them together makes it beautiful. We pass like the Chachamim. You do not need to bind your lulav, but we also pass that it's a mitzvah to do so. I like to point out something which, unfortunately, even people who have learned for many years are not aware. The Eker mitzvah of binding is a double knot. Now, there are those who put it inside these, whatever they call them, these shakers. And then some that put them in a ring. Oh, Shalom is over here, and he knows a lot about Abba Minim. He's the main supplier. But over here, you're aware of this halacha that you have to take a lulav leaf, and you actually have to tie it around and make a double knot. It doesn't look necessarily so beautiful for us, but because that is a beauty of chazan. No, a ring is not a double knot.
You don't get any mitzvah for a ring.
It is another kind of beauty, but the mitzvah is not enough if you really want to do the mitzvah right. A lot of people do. If you go to watch somebody, where you down, go to Yosef Rappaport, I don't know where you down, when you sit with that daughter, he will have a lulav leaf and it'll be tied a double knot. It doesn't look, and once you have to get quite a big one. Sometimes when you do the double knot, the leaf snaps, but that is the correct way to do it. No, you just take a string. Not a bow. Take it, knot, and then you got two things.
So not
right.
where they folded.
I do it around the lulav and the das navos. That is the correct way. Besides that, you can also put it inside the shake and everything else. That is the correct. I was very happy because you can, as long as that das navos are within it.
Oh, so do that. You get a big ring around the person.
A ring is not a double knot. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Where is the double knot?
A lot of people don't bother, but I'm telling you, if you look at the matter of Ephraim and others, recently I saw a sefer came out, Minim Kerchos or something, and there's loads of them. I was very happy that he writes somewhere in the thing, he says, you see loads of Abba Minim, and he hardly ever sees people doing a double knot, and even though it's not a chiyuv to do so, if they want to do it right, it's not very hard. It takes all of 1 minute. Of course, he yotza. I said again and again, you yotza without it 100%. No, but they should be aware that is a hidden mitzvah to do a double knot on the. To take a leaf to do a double knot.
Is that what you do then?
Yes, I've done it for years.
Where do you do it?
I ask always, can I have a few spare lulav leaves from the weather by the right? Possible, and then I take it, and sometimes it snaps, and I have to use another one. You get a feel for which kind of leaf works better. You can't ask. Okay. Zaka. Okay, Zaka.
Seriously, he decorated with like a purple ribbon.
All that.
Crown on top. You must remember.
Mishnah says, how many rules do you need for your Succca? Anybody remember the 3 rules? 2 rules. Mishnah says 2. What's the 2? We said there's one more that it's not mechubah still. So now we're focusing on the 2. Which is the 2? That it's not mekabel tumah and it grew. So let's say, for example, could you use an apple for Succca? No, why not? It's mekabel tumah. Very good. Can you use a metal waste, which is not mekabel tumah? No, it's not doing good. Okay. Something we know, because most metal is mekabel tumah. But let's say metal shavings, not mekabel tumah, can't use it. Okay. How do we know tomorrow? Why do we have sukkahs? Zecher to what? The Anani are covered. But what? Oh, right. So Anani are covered. The Anani are covered. The Gemara tells us that the Anani are covered were not mekabel tumah because they had no substance. And where did they come from? The Eidalim Minoros, they grew from the land. Ma'ei dovo she'enu mekabel tumah v'gdulei minoros. Av sukkah dovo she'enu mekabel tumah v'gdulei minoros. And here everybody mentions the point that if the reason we do it in sukkah is because of the Anani are covered, where did we get the Anani are covered? Beginning of Parshas B'Shalach, right? Right at the beginning. That Hashem would be they had the first day they came out of Mitzrayim, which was the 15th of Nisan. So why is it that we only sit in the Sukkah on the 15th of Tishri? So the Torah asks the question, what does the Torah answer? Because if you sit in the Sukkah on the 15th of Nisan, you wouldn't know they're doing it for a mitzvah, you would think you're doing it because it's the right time of the year. You wait for it to start raining, and then you go in the Sukkah to show you're doing the Shem Shemaim. And here I have to mention very briefly a story that B'Shem Zalman Auerbach, once a Talmud came to talk to him in learning, and they were walking together, and it was cold. So he said to B'Shem Zalman, why didn't you wear a coat? So he said to him, I thought it would be a warm day. I left the house. It looked warm. B'Shem Zalman said, how can you say such a thing? It says after Sukkot, and the Torah writes that after Yom Kippur, the weather turned cold, and that's the wrong time of the year to go outside. So if the Torah writes that after Yom Kippur, the weather turns cold, how could you think that the middle of that would be warm? Somebody who really knows halacha well can even know which kind of clothes to start wearing. But the Meister, it's a very sweet story how he had this, remembered all the. But the Gaon says a famous answer. What's the answer of the Gaon? Why do we sit in the Sukkah on Sukkot and not on Pesach? The Gaon says that we had an Anakam Kimatam Simon and we lost it by the ego. We got it back when Hashem said Tzlachti Ketvorecha on Yom Kippur. So the Anani HaKavod we got really, which we're more grateful for, is the fact that Hashem forgives us even after we've sinned. That however much bad we've done, Baruch still loves us. And therefore, that's why we do it in Anani HaKavod, because that was the 10th of Nisan they got it. So then straight away they started building the Mishkan. So therefore the 15th of 10th of Tishri, Hashem forgave them, the 15th of Tishri. Okay. So the reason why it can't be Mekabel Tumah and it has to grow from the ground is because clouds grow from the ground, not Mekabel Tumah. That doesn't work. Oh, that is the sukkahs for that code. What does it mean? The Tanya sukkahs the Shavtes the Yisroel and the covered you did Rabbi Kivim sukkahs mamash also them. Says machlekes if the sukkahs is connected the sukkah connected the Nani code. If it's because of the sukkahs itself, so how can you say that it's okay to use? Why can't you use Davar Mekabel Tumah? So God says, "Hanichelu abelezer and keep Michael meima." Ki also avdim yom avichna om makol chag sukkahs ta'aselecho. Makish sukkah lechagiga. We compare sukkah to chagiga. What's a chagiga? A korban which you bring every Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, compare. Ma chagiga dovish mekabel tumah is not mekabel tumah. Live animals are never mekabel tumah. Only human beings mekabel tumah, not animals. The gedula minor grows from the ground. Because how does it grow from the ground? Animals, the whole it's a herbivore and carnivore, right? Herbivore is something that only can eat things that grows from the ground. Animals like the Gol Chagiga are herbivores. So therefore they're forced to live off the land. So they're Gedulim in Oretz. So therefore, the Gedulim in Oretz, Af Sukkah Davash Mekabel Tumah Gedulim in Oretz. So Rashi, I just took the words out there. Asks Rashi, long Rashi over here. I'm not going to do the whole Rashi because I'm going to start today's daf. So Rashi says, if that's the case, you can do a nice schach. What you do is skin your cow and lie it on your schach.
No, it's Mekabel Tumah that wants.
But the Gemara says that first of all, it's not Mekabel Tumah until you made out of it a proper leather. While it's still only a skin, it's not Mekabel Tumah. And the Gemara anyway says, compared to the animals, says the Rashi that at this stage of the Gemara you'd be right. But later the Gemara doesn't say the word Gedulei Minoretz, but rather the Gemara says, it says like this, that there's different levels of Gedulei Minoretz. There's Gedulei Minoretz is something which actually grows from the ground, like a tree, like a plant. And Gedulim Minor is something that lives off the land. At this stage that we learned it from Chagiga, you would be right that leather skins of an animal would be okay. But later we're going to learn it from something that grows from the ground, and therefore you cannot use animal skins. So he says that this stage would be okay. And Rashi brings proofs that there are different levels. I should have mentioned this. Okay. Says the more you base it with the Aleph. Top line. You should only use live animals, only use animals. when you gather from your grain and from your wine press. But Pseilos Gerin v'Yekev Akos B'Dabe with the leftovers of the grain and the wine press. Let's use wine. Let's use grain. What about using wheat for schach? It says Yekev. Yekev means wine. How would you make schach with wine? You can't make schach with wine. If you can't make schach with wine, so back to the leftovers of wine. So therefore, it has to be like the branches of the vine. But you can't use wine itself. Maybe congealed wine. And maybe the Torah requires to use wine and grain congealed wine. It looks a little bit like a fig cake. A fig cake can be used for schach. We knew this idea. Yumi came and threw an axe at it because Yumi has asked a question and I don't have the answer. So I thought I knew it, but I don't. From your barn, not the barn, what's in the barn itself. And not for what's in the wine press. The pasuk says like this: that which comes from your barn and from your wine press, not which is in the wine press and in the barn, and therefore we use it. This is a pasuk in Nehemiah. I just want to say a tiny little thing. If you look in Rashi, it's about 7 lines from the Rashi of the Mishnah. Tzuaho. What's the words of Rashi? Pasuk hu b'sefer. What's Rashi? Ezra Rashi says. Pasuk hu b'sefer Ezra Rashi says. Now, if you look at the side of the Gemara, what does it say? Nehemiah. So what's going on? Did Rashi make a mistake? Oh, so Kiva Eger over here discusses this that Ezra and Nehemiah are interchangeable. Because what happened was, Nehemiah lost the right to have the Sefer written on his name. Nehemiah worked very, 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 very hard for second Beis Hamikdash. He literally put his whole life and soul in it. And in one of his tefillahs to Hashem, he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, remember from me all that I have done. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a bit tiny with a tzaddik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very medactic. And therefore he decided that the Sefer Nehemiah should be called as. Okay, getting off the point. Go in the mountains. This was Succca's time. View ale zayis, bring olive leaves. Ale ate shemen, and bring. This shemen is referring to date leaves. Ale ate shemen, olives. So what Shai have to understand? Well, what's the difference between ale zayis? I have a question as I was doing the pasuk. I don't know. Ale hadas and hadas leaves. Ale tmoim and date leaves. Va'ale ate ovois and leaves which are intertwined, which are like a good word for like a rope, which is what? Braided. Oh, thank you. Hadas and ate ovois. It's the same word. Hadas. How do we know? Ate ovois. The pasuk says you should take for yourself and sukkahs ate ovois, which is a braided branch, which we know is the hadasim. So why in this pasuk does it talk about 2 different kinds of hadasim? The 2 kinds of hadasim. The hadasim that all go from the same place, and that's kosher for lulav, and there's hadasim that don't go from the same place, and that's not kosher for lulav. So what can you do with it? You could use it for schach. So therefore, the pasuk over here says, take hadasim leaves, branches, and 8 obvious branches. One was for the hadasim, for the lulav, and one was for hadasim, for the schach. I have been in that solar once. I've seen people spend hours. Have you seen it? Hours and hours looking for hadasim that all 3 leaves come from the same place. And sometimes I've seen Yossi Moore told me that his uncle David Moore, the day after Yom Kippur, after fasting the whole day, sat for 10 hours straight without stopping to eat, looking for hadasim, and eventually found 2 hadasim off the thing. I can only what I can do is I can admire it. I cannot relate to it. On that high standard. So I once sat, there's a big Talmud Chacham in Kiryat Sefer called Yehuda Steinberg, huge Talmud Chacham. Yehuda Steinberg, what he used to do is he used to take a thread and see if the thread touches all 3. And he said if that's the case. That's about it. He used to take a thread. I remember I used to watch him. I used to sit by him. He lives in the Succca Mishra, huge part of Yehuda Kana. No, it's a tree. We know the 3 leaves he would take from the same place. He would take a thread. That's a mashulash. Okay, we'll come to it with the Chavile cash. Oh, bundles of straw, the chavile bundles of wood, the chavile zvod. And I had to look up in the art scroll and the words. Oh, very good. How did you know? Chavile zvod. I had to look it up in the art scroll. Zvod is canes, and there's quite a few words you have to look up over here. Ein besachid bohed. You're not allowed to use the faschach. The kulon sheitiron. If you undo them, keshavos is okay. A bundle which you undid is kosher. I don't know if you look carefully at the pictures which they had there. Here's pictures. Can you see the pictures of the bundles? 3 bundles, wood, straw, and canes. And here that if you undid them, it is kosher. The kulon kshirus letfonos, all is kosher letfonos. The Rashash points out that seemingly tiny, difficult point. The first kulon, all of them, is not referring to all the things we talked about. It's talking about the last thing we talked about, the bundles. If you undo them, it's okay. Then the next kulon is referring back to all the mishnayos. For example, something which is mekabel tumah, something that never grew in the ground, something that's still growing. All these things which we talk about the past mishnayos which are no good. So you have to read like this: the kulon, all these past things of the bundles, shetiron, the kulon, all the other things that we've been talking about even till now. Yeah, have this problem with this. It's going on everything. Shiur for this. Omar Yaakov. I heard from him 2 mishnayos. This mishnah. The bundle mishnah, which says that it's no good. Somebody that delves or burrows into a barn stack is not a sukkah, in a sukkah. And I heard from Rabbi Yochanan 2 things, 2 mishnayos. And Rabbi Yochanan went and then explained the logic behind these 2 mishnayos. And he said like this: one is because of gzeas oitza, and one because of tasav leminasa. And here, Rashi does a difficult thing. Rashi explains to us what gzeas oitza is, and then a minute later it tells us that's not what the Gemara meant. So we'll go first to the tasav leminasa because that's very straightforward. There are 2 mishnayos. What are the 2 mishnayos? The bundle mishnah, that you cannot use bundles, and the barn stack mishnah, where you borrow into a barn stack. Both are possible. Rabbi Yochanan told him, after he told him these 2 mishnayos, that there are 2 different reasons for these mishnayos. One mishnah is because of tasav leminasa. That's very simple. We've talked about it many times. Tasav leminasa means that you cannot have a schach which you didn't make after you build the sukkah. It becomes automatically created by itself without you putting it on the sukkah. It's not kosher. So I ask about this tasav leminasa. By the way, let me ask you: is it possible in Yomi to Rabbanon? What would you say? Tasav leminasa. What's with the Raisa with Rabbanon? But the Yehuda, let's say, would it be okay? But the Yehuda. It's a guess. Tasav leminasa is no good. It's not a sukkah. You've done nothing because the Torah said do it. You haven't. Now the other one, the gzeas oitza, and here Rashi explains gzeas oitza one way, and then Rashi says a minute later that the Gemara didn't mean this. I'll explain how Rashi explains now. We said once before, which is a complicated thing, that a sukkah is only kosher if it's made for shade, right? So, for example, if you have a room which is made only for tznius and not for shade from the sun, it's not kosher. Now, sometimes what a person would do, Rashi says people would be lazy, couldn't bother building a sukkah. So what would they do? They would just go into the storeroom and say, that's my sukkah. What's the problem going into the storeroom? Is that the roof in the storeroom is not made for shade. You do it, you don't do it for shade, you do it because of binyan, for protection. And therefore it's no good. So one mishnah is because of tasav leminasa, and one mishnah is exera, that if we allow what the mishnah is talking about, you'll then come to then use a oitza storeroom as a sukkah, and a storeroom is no good. And this is obviously only asking to Rabbanon, because this is only also gezerah. Perhaps you might do this. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaakov says, I do not know. That means I heard from Rabbi 2 mishnayos. I heard 2 explanations, but I don't know how to match the one to each one. Says the Gemara, let's work it out for ourselves. Why can't you use bundles? What's wrong with bundles? A person comes for home tired. He's got this bundle on his shoulder. He puts it on top of his roof in order that it should dry out. ונמלך עליה לשיחוך, והתאומו תעשב להם נעשוי. מדהה משום גזירת אויצה, משום תעשב להם נעשוי. Here Rashi now translates gzeras oitza a different gzeras oitza. Before we said gzeras oitza, you'll come to use your oitza, your storeroom as a sukkah, which is no good because it was never made for shade. Now the Gemara retracts. Gzeras oitza means something completely different. Gzeras oitza means like this. If we allow you to use bundles, what will happen is, one day you'll use bundles which you never put them with intention for schach. Why did you put them there? That they should dry out. So then what happens is that later you say, hey, look, it's there, it's good for sukkahs, I'll use that for sukkah. And then what would the problem be then? Tasav leim and asui. So therefore, this is a gzeira of tasav, this is a gzeira oitza of tasav leim and asui. Says the Gemara, so now, when you borrow into a barn stack, that is literally tasav leim and asui. In our Mishnah, it's the Gzeras Oitza of Tasav Leim Asui, meaning like this. Again, let's try to explain our Mishnah again. In our Mishnah, you've got bundles of wood. What's the problem with bundles of canes? What's from bundles of canes? That sometimes a person put bundles of canes on top of his sukkah to dry them out. Later he changes his mind, I don't need to dry them out. I will leave them for sukkah. But when you put them up, why did you put them up for shade? No, you put them out to dry out. And then you leave them there, and it's Tasav Leim Asui. Oh, you could, and then it'll be kosher. But according to this, if you actually put the bundles not to dry out, you put the bundles there for the sake of sukkahs, would it be kosher? So minhateh, of course, is kosher. But midrabanan, it won't be kosher, because if we allow you to use bundles, next time you'll use bundles which were there not for the right purpose. So that's the Gemara inside. Says, well, so the Gemara explains that. Rabbi Yaakov, why did he not know which Mishnah is which reason? He never heard of Chibaba. So therefore the Gemara now said they've got two Mishnahs. The Mishnah of digging into a barn, why is it no good? The Mishnah of the bundles, why is it no good? Because you might one day use a bundle which you put there intentionally to dry out. Is there no problem of Tasav Leim Asui? Literally, why do you have to come on to the Gezerah? Maybe our Mishnah is talking about somebody that intended to put it there to dry out, and therefore it's really Tasav Leim Asui. Why did he explain that our Mishnah is only with Rabbanon? And maybe you'll come to a problem of Tasav Leim Asui through Gezerah Oitza. Why not say that our Mishnah was talking about somebody that put bundles up, and he put it, what? We might have two Mishnayos. But who to know? Because maybe the Shor said he took. I mean, that's why the Mishnah. There was asking on a Beichnon. You explain one Mishnah to say one reason, one Mishnah to say another reason, when really both reasons apply to both. By digging into a barn is also a problem. Why? Because if we allow people to dig into a barn, what will happen is people will start saying to themselves, what's the difference between digging into a barn or using my storehouse? In both cases, I never built a sukkah for the sake of sukkahs. And therefore, you should be asked to use a dugout barn, a dugout haystack, because you might come to use your God. The reason Rabbi Yehuda differentiates between this Mishnah is, but there's difference, you have to be medayik in the words. The Mishnah says, don't. Lechatchila hu, top of your base, the mesachim mishum gzeras oitza. Or do I say shapitami? Also, they told the Eino Succca, afilu devet b'derais lam Eino Succca. There, the Mishnah says that achidit begodish lasle Succca, Eino Succca. It is not a sukkah. Here it doesn't say it's not a sukkah. Here the Mishnah says don't do it, which is mashma. If you did it, it is okay. Okay, I want to press on a bit. If you've got arrows, right? When was the last time you went to fight with arrows and spears? There are two kinds of arrows and spears. There are male arrows and spears, and there are female ones. And what happened was the article got a picture, and they've got a picture which is uploaded, but it's very easy without the picture. Basically like this. The difference between the male and the female, we talk about physically, and the one area of the body which is most noticeable is the male goes up, protrudes out, and the female has an opening to be protruded into. There are two ways to make a bow and arrow. One is you have a long stick, and then you have a hole in the head, and you stick the stick into the head. The other way is you have a head which protrudes out, and then you make a hollow cavity in your spear and you stick the head in. Now, you're talking about not using the head. Why we're not talking about using the head? Because the head of a spear is usually metal. It's usually metal, and you can't use it anyway. But the actual wooden part of the spear, the should be okay. So it depends. If it's a male one, it's okay. If it's a female one, it's no good. And the answer is the obvious reason is partial. If it's a male one, it's a long thin stick, which then gets pushed in to a metal piece. So it's not clean, very good, not clean cable, very good. But if it's a female one, so it's got an opening at the top which the metal goes into. Where the metal goes into, if you'd be very thirsty, you were desperate for a drink, you'd pour water into the top, and you could drink from the top of the thin. It's like a straw. It's a straw. It is literally a straw, where you then push in the head. So then it's a clay kibble, and therefore it's no good. So I have this picture of somebody who doesn't understand the Gemara saying that male people are okay, female women are like, it's nothing to do with that. What's wrong with the male one? You might have thought that if you use male spears, you might have to use female ones which have a base kibble. But the cave is psula pshita, of course it's partial, why not? You've got an area to put water in, so it's a kli kibble. It's actually a place to store things. This is not something which you fill in water and you drink from it. What do you normally do with these spears? You stick the metal in, it stays in, and it never ever gets used for anything else. So it's not used as a thing to hold. It's used to just be pushed in and to stay in. So you might have thought, if that's the case, it's not called a base kibble. Well, like a good English word for base kibble. Container, receptacle. Receptacle is a nice word, receptacle. So over here, you might have thought it's not made as a receptacle. That's no good. It's a question that is. Here we're going to talk about flax. Flax goes through 3 stages before it can be used as for your clothes. I can't imagine how much effort is made in every piece of item of clothing that we have. So first you soak it, then you beat it, then you comb it. Now, once it's properly made as a garment, you can't use it. Why not? When it's in its raw state, you can use it. Now we're going to have a big discussion. When is it considered in the raw state? When it's been fully combed, everybody would agree it's been soaked, it's been beaten, it's been fully combed, you can't use it. When it's not even been soaked, everybody would agree that you can use it as schach. The question is the middle stages. With combed flax, psula. Behutzde pishton, unprocessed flax, ksheva. Behushni pishton, which is partially processed, any yoda mahu, I don't know. Behushni atzman, any yoda, and I don't know what is hushnin. Monashach, I don't know, is it daik v'lo if it's been beaten but not combed? Hushni kole, maybe that's hushni. Avatori, if it's only been soaked and nothing else. V'lo daik, and it hasn't yet been beaten, hutzni kole, and it's okay. Or dimatori v'lo daik, nami hushni kole. Maybe just soaking it alone is also called hushni. That means there's 2 things which we're not sure about. We are sure that if it's been soaked, beaten, and combed, that is definitely possible. We are sure that if it's not been soaked, definitely kosher. Right? Again, not being soaked, definitely kosher. Soaked, beaten, and combed, definitely possible. The question is about the middle stage with this hushni. And regarding hushni, we don't know what hushni is. It's hushni when it's been soaked. And therefore, once it's already soaked, it already goes to the category that maybe it's no good. Or does hushni mean soaked and beaten? But when it's only been soaked, maybe it's not even considered hushni. So if we do not know, and therefore halacha and ma'aseh, you cannot use flax unless you've done nothing to it at all, unprocessed. Once you started processing, you cannot use it. There are different kinds of fruits which they are inedible, like a herb which is a vegetable which is unedible. I looked in the article, and shush they translate as ferns, and shvitzri, I couldn't even understand the word because I've never heard of the word before, so I'm not going to. You can tell us what the word of the what? Artemisia. So next time you go for supper, you should ask your wife for some. But you can be misach with it. The problem is that you can't. It's not edible, Rashi says. My tama, Rabbi disagrees, and we pass like a buyer. My tama, kivan, top of your gimel on the dalaf. The sorry we chayu shavik ruvanofik. Since they smell bad, you will walk out of the sukkah. Mishnah Berurah writes with tremendous, powerful words that you should make every effort to make your sukkah comfortable, and you should make your sukkah pleasant and smell nice, geschmack. Because the Gemara says that if you use schach, which smells bad, you cannot, the sukkah is possible. Why? Because you're not going to be there. So who are doing if you make a sukkah, and therefore he says this person should invest in trying to make the most comfortable sukkah they can. In order that person should, the Gemara says over here that these vegetables smell bad, people leave it. What? Oh, very good. Otherwise, you're going to have all kinds of ills. Brambles and thorns. You can't use thorns. Since they drop leaves, you're going to end up going out. And since you're going to go out, therefore it is no good, and therefore you can't use it for schach, because you're going to eventually walk out. I would like to carry on. Is everybody okay, or is anybody in a rush? So there comes some, like a few minutes. I explain the interesting Gemara now. We're talking about the machlokes Rishonim. We're talking about the bottom of a palm tree or the top of a palm tree. But a palm tree, if you want to use it for schach, what happens is it grows out. Since it grows out, so if you hold it at the bottom, imagine these big palm fronds, they're called. If you hold it at the bottom, would you call that a bundle? Yes or no? The answer is it's not a bundle. Oh, it's actually loads of branches. The answer is you didn't bundle it. It was bundled by creation. Bundled by creation is okay. Now, let's say what you did was, so you've got one massive palm frond, and it is spread in all directions, 20, 30 coming off it. It's not a problem because it's considered one. It's not considered many. But you want to get it to cover your roof properly. Now, if you want to cover your roof properly, what are you going to do? You tie them at the other end. Besides the fact they're one at one end, at the other end, you tie them together to make them that way you should be able to cover your schach. So is that a bundle or not? It says, well, that's also not a bundle. Because how many branches are you bundling now? One. It says only one branch. Again, in our Mishnah, we talk about many, many bundles, many canes they put together. Here, it is one branch, which of it come a very lot. That's not considered a bundle because Hashem made it as a bundle, not you. Oh, I'm bundling it together at the end. That's also not a bundle. Why is that not a bundle? Because it's like you took one cane and you took a string and put it around it for decoration purposes. Would that be a problem? No. So this is a fascinating Gemara where you've got a heter to take the palm frond, and even if it's bundled in one end and the other end, it's still okay. Let's see the Gemara inside. I have kusa the diklo, the offshoots or the branches of a date tree. I've got that gidi. What Hashem does, that's not considered a bundle. Hashem made it into one bundle. Oh, you bundle it at the other end to make it one into one branch. You should know in the olden days they didn't have brooms. What would they use for a broom? Does anybody know? A lulav. And they would just wait for it to spread a bit, and then you could spread it. So you want to use it for your schach, it's not so good. So here you tie it to the end. The answer is it's no good. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I get bechad. Bundling one branch is not nothing. Now the Gemara says exactly the same halacha, but regarding a different plant. These are stalks made out of a cane. Even though you bundle them on the end, sticks and poles with sachin bohem. Of course you can. They're actually canes. What's the problem? And we're going to stop over here. And it's a very interesting Gemara. It says it's got two big colors over here. In our mission, it says a bundle is no good. But if the bundle was made by Hashem, like let's say you've got this beautiful plant, and off it shoots loads of branches, and you put it on top of your tree, or your sukkah, kosher, not kosher? Kosher. And what happens if you tie them at the other end just to make it uniform, or they should fit in the sukkah, kosher, not kosher? Kosher. Oh, that's not a bundle. A bundle is to take separate entities and put them together. Very good. Next year we'll start from Omar Chista. Man should cover very lot of Inonim today. Very interesting Inonim. Amen. Thank you. Just the thought of it is just like. And I'm coming back on Thursday, but I don't know what time I'll arrive back. A week on Thursday, a week on 2 days. I'm going to a place called Nether Wasdale. Nether Wasdale. It's near the Lake District. I told you there's 10 houses. 10